welcome to this publication of our turnover for the first quarter of 2024. A lot of you tonight in French and in English, and we're going to start straight away, as always, by talking about our workforce. With now 815 people in the workforce. We've gone beyond the 800 person mark. We were a little under 800 last year, you'll remember. So that just means that the subsidiaries are obviously buoyant, even though the turnover for the first quarter are not good, as you'll see. But they're obviously confident in the future because they're convinced that our business will be upheld over the time. So welcome to all our employees and of course we'll see the opportunities ahead to win market share. First of all, and the most important, surprising thing about this early part of the year, I remind you that last year we had growth above 20%, which was made up of increases in volume, but also increases in prices. And that you see on this graph, and the next two graphs, the price effect of plus 4.3% and the volume effect, which was very strong at the time. And you'll see on the three following years that this volume effect and price effect progressively changed, with in 2022 a very high price effect at 10%, a volume effect which was almost 0.2%. In 2023 a negative volume effect with a positive price impact, but this first quarter we've got negative volume and price effect, with a very the result is a very low, very big decrease in growth, 17.2%. This is the highest we've ever had. So, some news from the key elements of this early part of the year. New housing in France, it remains very bad, and for the moment we don't see any immediate improvement in terms of new builds. You see on this graph here the two curves. The first curve, the blue one, which shows planning permission granted, and the orange curve, which shows new building starts. So we're imagining a recovery in the second half of the year, but for the moment it's not the case. So, to give us an idea of the pro market, so the wholesalers for sanitary and heating appliances, you see over the first 3 months of 2024, their sales have been very bad, with March down 15% compared to 2023. So, there again, very big decline compared to the historical figures. Now on to the DIY market, so the retail market, and with the INOA reference, there's two drops from the beginning of the year, minus 4.3 and minus 2.3%, so lower declines than the pro market, but and we can see an improving trend there. So this is a look at the PMI index. So I will remind you that when these are lower than 50%, it's a negative situation month on month, and that's the situation in France, even though, as you can see on the graph, it's actually improved compared to a few months ago. And we'll see in the months ahead if we can get above that 50 mark in the months ahead. Same process in Europe. The graph on the right shows a very similar kind of pattern.
Alors, qu'est-ce que ça donne en termes
So,
de chiffre d'affaires?
in terms of turnover,
Ces diapositives que nous vous présentons,
these next slides are a summary of letter number 114 to the shareholders, which you received, and they will provide you with results in turnover, subsidiary by subsidiary, whether up or down. In the retail sector, we've got a substantial decline due to the fact that Mecafar had an exceptional year last year with the sale of generators. For 22 and 23, two fantastic years. And also the weather, with a very rainy spring, which has a negative impact on Audrea, but also Jetly in the Pro channel, and that's particularly for watering pumps. Now, if we look at the Pro channel now, on this next line, again, very big drop with elements that we haven't mentioned yet, in particular the MaPrimeRénov' government grant scheme. And as you know, the French public authorities decided to change the rules for allocating these grants. After 2 months, they realized that the rules weren't helping the market, and as a result, all the allocation of grants have gone down by 40% in 2 months, and that means that the public authorities have had to change their strategy. We'll talk about that later, but this has created big problems for our Thermador and Isocell subsidiaries in terms of turnover. An also important point when we look at the total of minus 17.2% is the reference point. In the first quarter of 2023, we had very high growth, above 10% compared to 2022. And of course, so we expected a fall this year because of that high point, and indeed that base point was indeed very high. So, talking about outlooks now, in terms of new homes, we're still on the same position. We think that we've got to the bottom of the cycle. We will get to the bottom of the cycle in the first half of 2024. A couple of positive signs. The property market in France seems to be recovering, and there seems to be a loosening in mortgage rates. So those are signals which could suggest better prospects for new housing in a few months' time. The impact on our subsidiaries will only be felt in the first quarter of 2025. Just to remind you that there's an impact on only 10% of the consolidated turnover of the whole group. MaPrimeRénov' now, further to the change in strategy, as we talked about, the government has published 2 decrees in March, 22nd of March, will come into force on the 15th of May 2024, and they will allow the grants to be freed up a bit more readily, a bit more easily, and in particular encourage energy renovation. So change of a generator to install a heat pump or installation of a solar water heater, for example. It will help these what they call single gesture replacements. This will be favourable, of course, to Thermador and Isocell, and we imagine a possible impact in the third and fourth quarters of 2024. In terms of the wholesalers for sanitation and heating, we saw very negative figures earlier on, and we feel that we are all getting to the bottom of that particular cycle, and we're expecting a recovery over the next months, which could coincide with the energy renovation recovery. The figures are very good, but in the DIO market there are some positive signs from our customers who have given us to understand that the prospects are better for the months ahead, and we could see a return to growth on those markets. Industry in France, with these first quarter, we've seen more or less okay results in the industry sector. We've still got opportunity to gain market share in France, so we're confident about that market for 2024 and the years ahead, because of the actions of our teams and because of the nature of that market share. So for the water cycle, we're working with the French Rainwater Industries Federation, the IFEP, and Jetly is working with them to promote the optimization of water usage. For example, reuse of non-drinking water for toilets and watering systems. The idea is to encourage the government to improve regulations to encourage the consumption of those systems. And obviously the upside of that is that there'll be great savings in terms of drinking water. Internationally, now, our Spanish team had a record year in Odre in 2023, so we don't imagine major progress in 2024, but we hope they'll uphold that situation. Similar situation for Silico in Belgium, who had 2 record years, 22 and 23. However, on the other hand, Safeco is our main subsidiary working internationally, and there's real opportunity for gaining market share in Europe, but also in the African countries. Last word about outlook would be prices. At the end of December 2023, I gave a price effect of 3% in 2024, but we've seen that was wrong, and in fact there is a negative price impact on the first quarter of minus 1.9%. So we revised our forecast for 2024, so we're based on a negative minus 3% price effect over 2024, which is a big difference compared to our initial forecasts, because we're going from +3 to -3, so a swing of 6%. So Patricia, you're going to give some figures. Talking first about, again, outlook. We show here in this graph shows the weight of each quarter. We start for 2024 with a quarter in the red, of course. And we think that this is the low point, minus 17.2%. And if you look over the last 4 years, it's a poor performance. Minus 17.4, 17.2 is a low point. We have to look at the prospects in terms of that. As Guillaume said, we are counting on a recovery for the second half year with the MaPrimeRénov' improvement, and then maybe more favourable weather cycles. When we published the results at the end of December, we communicated about the first half year of 2024 being a challenging one, because of course we had that great performance in 2023. We talked to you a lot about that, and we are imagining a recovery in the second half. So we continue to communicate in the same manner with these elements which suggest a favourable second half to the year.
Je vais passer ensuite sur la diapositive suivante.
So on to the next slide, which is our growth targets.
C'est quelque chose que nous avons
That's
rappelé lors
something
de
that
notre
we
assemblée générale
talked about
du
the
avril qui a eu lieu sur Lyon.
AGM in
Nous
Lyon
avons
in
réuni
April.
215
We had
215 de nos actionnaires.
215
Et
of
donc,
our shareholders
c'est exactement
present.
pour montrer là où on en est. Donc entre 2017
And that's to show you where we are between 2019 and 2029. The idea is to double turnover
sur une année, enfin sur une période de 10 ans.
over that period of
Ça,
10
ça veut dire
years.
que ça représente
And
une
that's
croissance moyenne de 7%
an
par
average
an.
growth
Si
of
on
7% per year if we
regarde,
achieve that. And if we
2019 à
look at
2023,
the
nous avons une
period
avance
2019
par
to
rapport à nos
2023,
objectifs.
we're actually ahead of the game.
Et la courbe en fait de
The
couleur taupe
curve,
montre de
the
façon
brown
claire.
colour,
Donc nous sommes en avance par rapport à nos
shows that
objectifs.
we're ahead of
En
our
2024,
objective.
effectivement, nous
So
escomptons
2024, we're
nous
imagining
escomptons un retrait par rapport à cela.
a drop
Mais
compared to
c'est
2023,
à
but
mettre en ligne avec
we have to
finalement l'avance
bear
que
in
nous avons
mind that
déjà
we're
fait
on a
sur
10-year
2021,
trajectory.
2022, 2023. Donc ça concerne la partie
So
chiffre d'affaires.
that's
Et
the
puis nous avons,
turnover
en fait, échangé
aspect.
avec nos analystes,
And we've
les analystes
talked
qui
with
suivent, en
our
fait, l'action Thermador,
analysts
qui sont
yesterday,
le CIC, Odo et Portzamparc.
the CIC, Odo
Par nos
and
échanges sur la
Portzamparc,
réalisation
and we talked about
du
the
premier trimestre en termes de
first
chiffre d'affaires.
quarter
Nous
in
avons
terms of
quand même
turnover,
échangé sur la
and we
partie,
talked a lot about
marge
margin,
et sur la
commercial
partie
margin,
des frais, notamment,
and
quelle est la
the
part de frais,
aspect
des
of
frais
costs. So,
variables dans nos
and
frais totaux.
in particular, the variable
Donc,
costs in our
concernant la marge
operations. So,
commerciale, les éléments importants à
the
souligner,
key elements to
c'est d'abord,
emphasize
le fait
about
que,
commercial margin is
nous
firstly
avons une marge qui se
that
tient depuis
the
le
margin,
début de l'année.
our margins
Nos
are being
filiales,
upheld,
sur les années où on a été très
and
challengés,
over the
et
years
2022, on
the
est venu
subsidiaries
avec des augmentations de prix.
have really been
2023,
challenged in terms
également.
of prices
Nous avons,
and
nos filiales en
purchasing.
fait, ont montré
So
une résilience
they've showed
et,
great
une
resilience
capacité à défendre le niveau de la marge,
and
de
a great
notre marge
ability
commerciale.
to defend our
Nous
commercial or
pouvons
their
espérer,
commercial margins,
que ça va durer sur cette
and
année
we hope
2024,
that
nous
that will
verrons déjà
continue
dans les
into
premiers mois
2024. There's no reason
de
it
cette année.
shouldn't.
Ensuite, l'autre élément important au niveau
The
de la
other
marge commerciale, c'est
key
l'effet sur le
element
l'effet dollar,
is
puisque
the
nous
euro-dollar
achetons
exchange rate
nos-
effect.
nos
29% of
produits,
our
en-
products
en
are
Asie et
bought, of our
en
purchases
dollars, essentiellement.
are in
Et
dollars.
si nous regardons l'effet,
And
le
if
taux de-
we
le taux de
look
change
at
sur ce
the
premier trimestre
exchange rate effect on the
2024,
first
il est
quarter of
plus favorable
2024,
que le
it's
premier
favourable
trimestre 2023.
and more
Donc,
favourable than the
quelque part,
first
ça
quarter
va
of 2023.
donner
So that will
sur un
help,
prix moyen d'achat.
so that
Ça
our
va
purchasing
esco- ça-
prices
ça- en fait, on va en bénéficier un petit peu plus tard dans
will
l'année.
be-
Donc
will
ça,
be
c'est
lower.
un effet positif à prendre en compte.
and a positive effect for later on in the
Ensuite,
year.
donc ça c'est pour la partie marge
So
commerciale.
that's
Sur les
commercial
éléments,
margin.
sur les frais, donc
Then
ce
if we
qu'il
could
faut
talk about
noter, c'est que
expenses more
le
generally,
poste le plus important
we've
dans
got
notre compte de résultat concerne les frais de personnel et ces frais de
our
personnel,
personnel, of course,
nous
are the
avons une
highest
partie qui est
salaries is the
rémunération
highest
fixe, une partie qui est
charge that we
rémunération
have,
variable.
and
Et la
that's
partie
made up
rémunération
of
variable
fixed
représente 21%
salaries and variable salaries,
de la rémunération.
and
ce qui
21%
fait
of
que,
total the wage
effectivement,
bill
si
is
nous
in
avons-
variable.
anticipons,
So
une baisse de notre résultat,
you can imagine if we've got
les primes, en
a
fait,
reduction in
distribuées,
turnover,
suivront cette
the
même tendance.
variable costs will reduce
Ensuite, sur les frais variables,
accordingly.
Nous avons
Also,
dans nos frais
in variable
variables, près de
costs,
7% de
we've got
de nos frais qui sont des frais variables. Ça concerne donc les transports sur vente,
3.7%
les commissions sur vente
of
également
turnover
qui sont
in
en
variable
fonction donc du
costs,
niveau de
so
chiffre d'affaires
transport,
atteint.
temps,
Nous avons tout ce qui concerne
which of course
l'utilisation
we knew
de personnel intérimaire
we
pour
need
renforcer nos équipes.
fewer of if
Et
we
le
have a
quatrième
lower
poste
turnover,
concerne les frais d'emballage puisque
and also
nous
packaging.
emballons, les produits avant d'être livrés chez nos
So
clients.
for
Et ça,
shipment, of course,
effectivement,
if
c'est
there are
dans
fewer
le
products, there's
volume
less
avec, le
expense
montant, enfin, le volume de chiffre
mechanically.
d'affaires. Donc tout ça, ce sont des frais variables.
So
Après,
those are
les autres
variable
éléments
costs.
qui pourraient
The other
qui
key
vont
event
représenter
which
des économies en 2024,
will bring savings in
nous
2024
souhaitions, en fait, souligner, mais ça nous l'avions déjà
We talked
communiqué,
about
des
it
éléments sur les
in
consommation d'énergie et de gaz, puisque
earlier we
c'est un poste,
talked
en
about
fait, qui a
energy consumption,
augmenté,
so
en fait, en
gas
2023.
and
Nous
electricity.
avions plus d'1 million d'augmentation de coûts sur ce poste.
In 2023, we'd seen a 1 million euro increase. 2024, the prospects are better because we've renegotiated our energy contracts,
avec une baisse anticipée à peu près à moins 40%.
and we're expecting an overall drop of 40% in our energy contracts. And also in terms of consumption, we've reduced electricity consumption and gas consumption, 30% for gas, and 9% gain in energy consumption for electric. So that's the work of all our teams in the warehouses, the purchases, working on the sobriety plan to generate savings, and that plan will help us to reduce our energy costs over time in a permanent fashion. So those elements are linked to commercial margin and expenses. Now we're going to look at investments, and that's is to be set in context with our cash position. So you saw this slide at the annual general meeting. We wonder how, we obviously plan how we're going to use our cash during the year. There's the dividends, of course, which we paid this week. And there's also property, real estate projects, logistics or IT projects. For 2024, the budget is 9.7 million, 4.4 million of which for property investments. But I can already tell you that we will not spend all of that 9.7 million over the year. There will be projects in the subsidiaries which will be put back to the first quarter of 2025. Next slide. So cash. We don't normally publish these figures outside end of June, end of December, but we wanted to tell you about the improvement in our cash position.
Versus 16 millions en 2022.
In 2023 we had a great improvement because we had 35.2 million euros of cash with 38.7 million euros debt at the end of December. And the question that we have here is the complementary price paid to DPI, which is the famous earn-out of 5.1 million. So we've got a 10 million euro better cash position at the end of March 2024. But of course, that could have been 5 million more if we hadn't had to pay the 5.1 million earn-out. This cash can be invested and generate interest, of course.
Oui, mais ça y est, c'est déboursé. Le 16 avril, ça a été déboursé, mais c'est pas dans les 45 millions. Donc ça fait déjà 45 moins 19, on en arrive à...
Okay, so just to clarify that on the dividends to be paid out are 19 million, and they will come out of that 45 million. So this cash will help us to finance our external growth, also possibly. And there's a question, where are we with the Compteur Energy purchase, acquisition? Patricia, can you tell us where we're at with that? So we've done all the financial audits, and we're in the phase of writing the agreement protocols for the acquisition. Of course, there are a number of guarantees that have to be established. Sorry to interrupt you, you can carry on with your presentation. So I'd finished with the cash, and I then wanted to move on to the next slide, which shows you the performance of our share on the stock market over the past 10 years. And it shows an annual gross gain of 12.3% per year for Thermador Groupe, and which outperforms the CAC 40 French stock exchange, which shows a plus 9.6% gain per year. So we're ahead of them. All this information is available on our website. You can consult that. And there's an even more updated further than that. Or this one is only a week old.
Patricia. Alors, je
Okay.
précise,
Well, thank you,
ceux qui nous
Patricia.
écoutent que
I would like
nous
to
attendons vos questions sur
explain
le-
that we are
questions.
waiting for your
Sur le chat. Bon,
questions
si vous mettez
on
vos
the
questions sur le chat,
question tab. Don't put them in the chat.
Arlette se fera un plaisir de
Arlette
transférer
will
sur-
try and transfer them from
Donc une
from the
première
chat.
question de
But the
Sylvie
first
Aubert
question
qui
comes from
nous
Sylvie,
demande,
and
si,
she's
nous
asking,
allons saisir des opportunités d'acquisition
are you going to
à l'aide de notre bon bilan.
seize
Donc,
upon
merci pour le qualificatif.
acquisition opportunities
Effectivement, on a quand même un
after
bilan, solide.
the good balance
Ou
sheet?
plutôt garder notre cash et
Or
faire l'euro.
Were you going to
En fait,
weather
je
storm and keep the
répondrai
cash?
différemment.
I'd
Nous
answer
n'avons
differently.
pas
We don't
actuellement,
have any
d'opportunités d'acquisition
acquisition
paraissent,
opportunities at the moment, which
intéressantes
seem
à moyen
interesting
long terme pour le
to
groupe.
us in the medium or long
En
term.
tout cas, rien
In any event,
significatif.
Nothing
Donc,
that's
il ne
very
faut pas s'attendre,
important.
pour cette
So
raison-là,
you shouldn't
encore
really
pour des problématiques
expect
financières, il ne faut pas s'attendre en 2024 à une opération
that
significative
in
d'acquisition
2024 we'll see any
dans le
major
groupe
acquisitions.
Thermador.
Not because of the cash
Surprise,
question,
mais si c'est
but
le
because
cas,
of the opportunity
on
question.
vous proviendra, bien
Of
évidemment.
course, there may be surprises, and if
Il
there
y a
are,
une
we'll
autre
tell you.
question
Of course, another
de
question
Sylvie qui a été
from
posée
Sylvie,
sur le chat.
which is
Par rapport,
about
alors il y a une
water.
double question. Le problème de l'eau,
the first question is about water.
la sécheresse est devenue
with
cruciale. C'est mauvais
the-
pour les piscines et donc un marché de moins pour vous. Sylvie,
And it's also bad for swimming pools, and therefore that's bad a market for you. But we don't see it like that.
Au contraire, puisque nous
On the contrary, we don't have this vision for the swimming pool market, and we are looking at systems which
mais également d'économiser l'eau et l'électricité.
save water and
Quelles
electricity.
sont ces solutions techniques?
So these
Des
technical
pompes à faible
solutions
consommation
are
électrique,
low
même si elles coûtent plus
electricity
cher,
consumption
on s'y retrouve très
pumps,
vite, en retour sur investissement du
a
côté de
little more expensive, but
l'électricité.
the return on investment, of course, is shorter.
Des solutions également pour économiser
Also,
l'eau.
solutions for
Imaginez
water saving.
la taille
Imagine
d'une piscine, c'est
the
un
size of a
véritable
swimming pool.
capteur
It's a
d'eau.
real
Si vous avez la bonne idée
tank
d'avoir une
of
cuve de
water.
récupération d'eau
If
à
you have
proximité de ce
a
capteur, ça vous
water
permet
recuperation tank
notamment
nearby.
de récupérer l'eau,
You can
qui vient des orages,
capture
et ensuite
rainwater,
de réalimenter votre
which you can then use to fill up your
Nous
pool.
avons aussi des solutions
We've
techniques
also got
qui
technical
permettent
solutions which allow us
d'éviter
to
l'évaporation en
avoid
été.
evaporation during
Toutes les
the
solutions
summer. So
rendent
all these solutions
l'utilisation,
make
l'usage
the
des
use
piscines
of
tout à fait
swimming
sobre,
pools
et donc tout à fait
sober in terms of
concevable,
in energy
même
terms.
dans une
And so
vision d'économie.
even in
Voilà,
this
c'est pour le marché de la piscine.
economic
Ce marché n'est pas
prospect
terminé
situation,
pour
we can still
Au
imagine
contraire, je pense qu'on a
a
encore de
buoyant
belles choses à
market
faire.
for
On peut
swimming
dire quand
pools.
même que ça fait depuis déjà 3 ans que
There's 3
au
years
niveau d'AELO,
that-
ils travaillent sur ces solutions.
that ILO have been
Et
working on
là,
these solutions for
ils
3
l'ont
years.
présenté à différents salons et maintenant,
The different
effectivement,
shows they
ils
presented
les
their
installateurs
solution,
de pousser ces
swimming
solutions.
pool
Donc ça, c'est maintenant le travail qui est en train
installers
d'être,
are
réalisé
using
par
their
les équipes d'AELO.
solution. So obviously it's
Et
working.
la suite de la question, expliquez davantage quel rôle vous pouvez jouer
So
pour
can you,
l'économie d'eau.
the rest
Alors,
of Sylvie's question is, can you explain what rôle you can play to save water? So there's rainwater that we can reuse, as we said earlier on, for watering and for
peut
toilets.
éventuellement
You
imaginer
can
aussi,
Also
demain, utiliser cette eau
imagine using
pour, la machine à
this
laver.
water for your washing machine.
Possible. Alors quand vous faites une économie d'eau
So when you save water,
potable sur les toilettes et la machine
so
à
if
laver,
if you save
dans
drinking
une famille
water,
classique, vous pouvez diviser déjà votre consommation d'eau par 2.
you
C'est
can
très important, imaginez ça à l'échelle
you
du
can
pays,
halve
ça représente,
a normal family's
c'est
water
extrêmement
consumption.
important. Il y a aussi d'autres solutions techniques qui
There are other
permettraient,
technical solutions
de
which will
récupérer
allow us
l'eau
to
de la douche,
recover
par exemple.
water from the
Ça
shower,
mérite
for
de la
example.
réglementation
That's
qu'on a
that
aujourd'hui, mais,
really
cette
requires
eau, de la
regulations
douche
from the
qui est
government.
juste
It's not the
salie par
case
un peu de
today.
savon, et
This
pas
water
grand-chose d'autre,
is just
peut être réutilisée, par
dirty,
exemple,
shall we say, with
pour
a
les
little
toilettes.
bit of soap, but it could be used elsewhere, like for the toilets.
Pour, l'eau
The
que
same
l'on utilise dans la cuisine,
for water
qui peut
that
être
you use in the
réutilisée
kitchen, which could be
Ces
reused.
solutions techniques
All these technical
existent.
solutions exist,
C'est pour ça que nous avons
and that's
travail à
why
faire vis-à-vis des pouvoirs
we
publics de
believe
manière à
there's
adapter
work that we can
la
do with the public
réglementation
authorities
pour
to
pouvoir mettre ces
modify
solutions
the regulations and make these
à disposition
technical
des
solutions
utilisateurs
available
et,
to
économiser
consumers
l'eau, qui est
and
un
help
enjeu
us to
majeur pour
save
la
water,
France
because it's
et
a
pour
real
beaucoup
challenge
de-
for France and many European countries.
Patricia, tu as, sur la partie anglophone.
Vas-y.
Donc j'ai deux questions en fait de la part de
So, two
de-
questions
de
in
Matt.
English from
Can
Matt.
Alors donc je pense que donc Neil voit les questions en anglais. Donc c'est en fait la question c'est est-ce que vous pouvez quantifier l'effet de ma prime rénov sur votre croissance de chiffre d'affaires. Donc si on parle de
So, can you
de mémoire,
correlate
on avait
the
communiqué
MaPrimeRénov
sur ce chiffre-là,
grants
donc c'était sur l'année 2022. où on était sur à peu près 40 millions
into
de
turnover.
croissance qui était en fait
We
due au mécanisme
Saw
de MaPrimeRénov'.
40 million
Donc,
euros
effectivement, quand on
extra
regarde,
because of
sur l'année- sur le
Mavigner
premier
Renov
trimestre
in
2024,
2023. So
il y a
you
la
can
partie
see
rénovation
in the first
énergétique
quarter
MaPrimeRénov',
of
on n'a pas
2024
de-
the
on n'a
negative
pas
effect
de- il n'y a pas de chiffre d'affaires généré, ce qui explique
because
que
of no
le-
turnover being
la
generated
baisse de
from
la baisse de chiffre d'affaires de Thermador,
MaPrimeRénov'.
qui est la principale qui
and primarily, of course,
agit,
Thermador, our
sur
subsidiary
le marché de la
Thermador.
rénovation énergétique. Donc le deuxième,
Second question from
la deuxième question concerne la deuxième question, toujours de Matt.
From Matt. Says
Et en fait, oui, la première c'était sur la partie
The first question
et donc la deuxième
was
c'était
MaPrimeRénov'.
lié vraiment
and the second
c'est la même. Et la troisième question c'est
there's a
est-ce que
third
vous pouvez
question,
nous
sorry.
donner plus de
Can you give
détails,
us more details on
sur
why
les
DPI
explications de la sous-performance depuis
underperformed
le DPI depuis que
your
vous l'avez,
expectations
acquis.
since you acquired them?
Alors, l'explication,
So,
elle
the
date de
explanation,
l'année dernière. Alors, c'est vrai
dates
que
back
depuis
to
que
last
nous avons
year.
acquis cette
So,
société,
since we bought them,
vraiment baissé son chiffre d'affaires. On l'a déjà expliqué sur l'année
as we explained in 2023, there was a sharp drop in turnover because of the
également au non-report de chantiers
drop
très
in
importants pris en 2022. Et c'est vrai qu'on démarre
raw materials,
2024, là aussi,
and we're starting
une baisse de chiffre
2024
d'affaires
with a drop in
par rapport à
turnover
2023,
compared to
qui est là
2023,
aussi,
and which is
dû à
linked
un effet
to
prix,
a
extrêmement
price
défavorable.
effect which is
Alors,
very unfavorable
il est clair
to
qu'avec,
DPI. Clearly,
l'augmentation du prix du
with the
pétrole,
increase in the
logiquement,
price of
on a un
oil,
sous-jacent sur
there's
le prix qui devrait nous être beaucoup
a
plus
subjacent
favorable
effect
dans
on
le mois
price
qui vient.
which should be favorable in the months
À la
ahead,
limite près que la concurrence est
except
extrêmement
that
vive
the
actuellement
competition
sur
is
ce marché.
very strong
Chaque
on this
intervenant
market.
cherche des
Each
volumes, mais une concurrence
participant,
extrêmement féroce.
each player is
Donc,
looking
on
for
est
volumes,
effectivement
and
sur
so
une
the
période,
competition is
comme
ferocious,
disait,
fierce.
Grégory Urpi, le dirigeant de cette société, qui
And
n'a
Grégory
jamais
Urpi,
connu dans ce métier.
has told us that he's never seen anything like this in his sector. It's a temporary thing,
Les temps sont
we
durs,
hope,
pour des pays.
but it's
Après,
a hard period for
Je
DPI.
pense
It's
que
true.
quelque part, quand on avait étudié
I think
l'acquisition de
when
DPI,
we studied
on avait
the
bien
acquisition
conscience
of
qu'il y avait un
DPI,
phénomène
we
de
realized
baisse de prix qui
that
se
there was
comportait directement dans le chiffre d'affaires. Donc on avait
a price
on avait eu
phenomenon
effectivement un
which
certain
was affecting
nombre
the
de
turnover, and there were a
perspectives
number
dans le
of
chiffre d'affaires.
prospects
Et
in
parce que
terms
nous
of
avons
turnover,
retenu, en fait, dans les évaluations que nous
because
avons faites,
in
l'autre élément
our
dit qu'elle
assessments,
sous-performe, que
and
DPI sous-performe, mais si on regarde son niveau
they
de
are
résultat,
underperforming, as you say, but we see that they worked a lot in 2023.
Ils ont ouvert des petits clients, des plus petites affaires avec une marge plus forte.
They
Quand on regarde
kept their smaller
2022,
customers with
finalement,
bigger
ils avaient
margins.
62 millions d'euros de chiffre d'affaires avec
In
des
20,
grosses affaires,
2022, they had
des gros
62
marchés
million
avec des marges
turnover
plus
with
faibles.
big projects,
Donc effectivement,
which obviously would come to an end.
2023,
So
ils ont
2023,
eu une baisse
they
du chiffre d'affaires,
had a
mais
reduction in
la rentabilité,
turnover,
elle a été
but
préservée.
they kept their same profitability.
Par rapport, en fait,
2024,
aux réalisations. Et
we'll
ce qui est
see
important,
what
c'est
happens,
effectivement, il y a des frais de structure qui sont très,
but there are
très bas chez des pays. Donc c'est la préservation de la marge et la
so
défense de la marge.
the idea is to protect the margin as we move forward.
Une
The
question
commercial
de
margin.
Pierre.
A question from
Vous avez
Pierre.
parlé de vos achats avec des taux plus favorables.
You
En
talked
revanche,
about
envisagez-vous de
purchases
négocier,
with
voire de vous
more favorable
réorienter
rates.
vers
However,
d'autres fournisseurs.
are you thinking
Non,
of
le
looking
travail,
at
alors, la
other
réorientation vers d'autres
suppliers?
fournisseurs dans des périodes difficiles, c'est
Eh
pas
non.
l'esprit de la société. puisque
During
travailler
difficult
avec
times,
des fournisseurs,
that's
en
not
partenariat.
the spirit of the company, because
En revanche,
our
la négociation de
suppliers
prix, c'est quelque
are
chose qui est tout à fait naturel dans la relation.
our partners,
Et
but of
nous
course
avons
price
beaucoup de
negotiation is possible,
fournisseurs,
and we've seen a lot of our
de
suppliers
leur propre initiative nous proposer des baisses de prix
offering price
justement,
reductions
pour faire face à un marché,
without us asking
plus,
for them
difficile.
necessarily in
Donc,
this more
tant
difficult
que
market,
Patricia
in this
parlait,
more difficult time. So when
d'une
Patricia
capacité
talked
que
about
nous avons à
the capacity we
conserver la
have
marge
to
commerciale,
maintain
bon,
commercial
si vous
margins,
faites,
of course,
le rapprochement
if you
entre,
make the link between
baisse,
a reduction
prix et
in
conservation de
prices
la marge
and
commerciale,
maintaining
ça veut également dire que
commercial
nous
margins
bénéficions, de meilleures conditions de la part de nos fournisseurs.
means you're
Mais c'est
going to
un
get
travail
better
que font,
conditions from the
services
suppliers.
achats,
But that's, of course,
c'est un
our
travail que font
our
avec,
purchasing department
nos services achats.
that works on those subjects.
Pouvez-vous revenir plus en détail sur les décrets qui devraient permettre à la dynamique du marché de la rénovation de se redresser? Alors,
C'est déjà passé, les décrets.
Can you give us more details about the decrees which will allow to redynamize the market for renovation? So these two decrees, which come into force on the 15th of May, they will allow energy renovation players to finance single unit changes. So, for example, replacing, installing a solar water heater or solar panels, and that wasn't possible in the past. This is a change in. This is a temporary change in strategy for 2024, but we hope that in the long term they will promote overall renovations. So package renovations where you've got several different elements being changed, more effective generators, more energy efficient solar heaters, etc. Because if you just install a beautiful heat pump and not do nothing else, then the effect, the virtuous effect will be lower. So we will adapt. We've now got equipment which is available and we're ready to adapt to this new change during 2022 and adjust to the regulation for 2025, which will certainly come along with the idea of having a renovation advisor, so that people, when they want to make renovation to their properties, there will be a sort of supervisor who will act as an advisor and who will group all the different elements of the renovation projects. So we need 4 or 5 advisors of this sort, and today there are about 3,000. Question from iWare. Can you comment on the reduce on energy costs? Yeah. Sorry, we're talking about price trends. We were working to a 3% increase in prices, and in fact, it's going to be the turnaround came more quickly than we expected. And we've got gross prices, which are fixed at the end of the year, and those prices were either level or with a slight increase, 3%-ish. So the level of reductions was lower, and that's why we've also got a reduction in raw material prices by 3 points, I think. Simply in relation to this surprising change of situation, of course we talked to the subsidiaries to have their opinion on it, but we asked them what their estimation would be about the impact price would be, the price impact would be, and that's why when we go back to the elements that we've received from the subsidiaries, we're looking at a negative price effect of 3%, but we can't really be sure of that because there's hundreds of suppliers, thousands of customers. Everything moves quickly. We'll try to keep you as well informed as we can. But we were mistaken at the end of the year with our expectation of plus 3%. Baptiste, what is the share of organic growth in the figures? So if you look at page 10-11 of the Universal Registration document, we've got, through our external growth, we've got a certain amount of flexibility, use market price effect when we can,
créer des nouvelles gammes, éventuellement
external growth, create new
conquérir de nouveaux territoires.
new
Tout ça, ce
product
sont des
ranges,
possibilités
move
en
into
France.
new geographies.
Tout ça, ce sont des possibilités qui
All those
s'offrent à nous en croissance
possibilities
stratégique.
which
Et
we
la
have
croissance
to
externe
grow.
vient effectivement amener un
And
plus pour
with,
assurer cette
of
expansion.
course, with
Et
organic
nous n'avons
growth.
pas
And then,
lieu
of course,
au
you've got
fait.
external growth where
C'est,
we have the
cet
opportunities
équilibre
of
organique
acquisition.
externe.
And we have to
Nous sommes
make
des gens
some,
absolument
to
pragmatiques.
get a balance
Ça
between
confirme
organic
bien, en
growth
fait,
and
ça répond aussi à la question de Matt qui
external
demandait si
growth.
les 7% de
And
croissance
Matt
intégrait
asked
les acquisitions, effectivement,
whether
la
the
croissance
7% of
externe
growth
fait partie des
included
moyens pour atteindre cet objectif.
those achieving those
Raphaël
objectives.
revient sur l'effet prix. Alors, comme je l'ai dit dans
So,
ce
Raphaël
présentation, c'est quand même
is
l'information majeure de cette
asking us again about the price effect.
Et il conclut, est-ce que cette baisse pourrait s'accentuer?
Could this
Je l'ai dit, ça peut
decrease
s'accentuer un
get
petit peu.
worse?
Pour l'instant, l'estimation, c'est
Yeah, we
moins 3%.
we've got an estimate of minus 3%, but I don't think we're going into a big inflationary moment.
Représente 2/3 de nos approvisionnements aujourd'hui.
But 2/3 of our supplies come from Europe, a little more,
70%.
almost
Nous ne
70%.
voyons pas des prix
We don't
baisser,
see
de manière
any
très significative.
Substantial drop in prices there.
Ces ajustements de prix
These
viennent
price
plutôt,
adjustments
effectivement, de
come
produits
more
des
from
pays asiatiques.
products from Asian countries.
Question de mon côté.
Alors, Patrick
So,
demande, en tant que
Patrick,
distributeur, la marge brute n'est-elle pas
as a
un meilleur
distributor,
indicateur de performance que le chiffre
Is
d'affaires?
gross margin not a better indication of performance than turnover?
Euh,
Could you communicate a little more about
On communique sur la marge,
gross
le
margin?
résultat opérationnel, le
So,
résultat net,
we give you the
trimestriel,
net result,
semestriellement,
operational
et
margin,
traditionnellement, sur le chiffre d'affaires
quarterly,
trimestriellement.
and for turnover every quarter. And
Dans notre
Ouais, mais je
in
pense que
the
c'est lié aux
URD,
publications.
Oui, non, mais exemple historique. Donc en fait, oui, effectivement, on met en fait notre marge sur les 10
Alors,
dernières années.
Ce qu'on
so
constate,
we show our margin
c'est
over
que,
the last 10
comme l'a
years
dit, Patricia
in
tout à
the
l'heure,
URD. As Patricia
la
was
marge
saying
commerciale est
earlier,
vraiment de la
the
responsabilité
commercial
de nos filiales.
margin
C'est
is
quelque chose qui
the
nous
responsibility of our
maîtrise
subsidiary,
bien,
and it's something they
parce que,
control completely.
on publie dans le document d'enregistrement universel que cette marge varie assez peu.
And that margin doesn't vary very much. There's no much point in communicating on those figures every quarter. If there was major variations, of course, we would have to tell you about them. But the fact is that those variations are very, very limited.
Et après, pour rappel, on communique
And just as a reminder, we do,
le résultat, la
communicate
marge
our
brute. On
gross margin.
On communique quand même filiale par filiale
we do that
chaque année. Donc
subsidiary
ça nous
by
permet quand même de
subsidiary
voir,
every year,
les évolutions.
and that
Et
allows you to see
ça met en lien
the
avec
trends.
les activités dans lesquelles nos filiales opèrent. Donc on a quand même une granularité de
So
l'information.
there's sort
qui,
of detailed
pardon,
information in that
contraction.
sense, in terms of
Raphaël
subsidiary by
revient
subsidiary.
sur un événement de l'Assemblée générale et demande comment expliquer l'accueil des salariés réservés concernant les actions gratuites.
How do you explain during the annual general meeting,
contre-intuitif.
why
Alors, dans le groupe
did the
Thermador,
salaries,
nous sommes,
why were the
transparents.
employees not
Vous
so
savez,
keen on the free
la
share scheme?
transparence qui est extrêmement
So,
forte.
as you know, we're very
Préalablement
keen
à
on
l'Assemblée
transparency,
générale,
and
nous
before
faisons
the
l'exercice,
AGM,
d'expliquer à nos
we
salariés,
explained to
en
our
deux grosses
employees
réunions,
in 2
les
meetings
enjeux des
the
différentes résolutions.
the
Nous avons clairement expliqué aux
challenges
salariés
linked to the
que
different
le
resolutions,
concept
and we
de
explained to
action
them
gratuite
that this free share scheme
n'était pas tout à fait gratuit, hein, puisque les actions gratuites
isn't really free
à
shares,
l'entreprise et aux
because of course
et
free,
par voie de
in
conséquence,
inverted commas,
peuvent se répercuter
shares
sur le
cost
compte de résultat des
the
filiales,
company.
voire dans certains cas sur
And
le niveau du résultat
It can
opérationnel
affect the
et,
operating result and
éventuellement,
the performance of
sur
the
les
subsidiaries,
prix, la participation
and
du
even maybe on
Donc, c'est vrai que les
the
salariés,
profit sharing for the employees. So the employees saw this possibility as being a risk for them in terms of their variable earnings in the short term, even though the longer term promise was certainly more beneficial. So there's a substantial proportion of employees who seem to be reserved about it. So for the resolution in question, it was 40% voted of the employees voted against. So we feel that we've not sufficient buy-in to launch that project. So we'll work on that a bit more and find something more consensual at a later date.
Rudolf pose une question.
Rudolf's
Votre
asking a
difficulté
question.
s'explique principalement du marché du neuf et des mises en chantier.
Your difficulties are explained primarily by the new housing build and building starts. No, it's not exactly that. The drop in the first quarter is not primarily because of that. It's due primarily to the energy renovation activity and because of the MyPrime Renov scheme. The effect has been on PB-Tube and Thermacome. Have had an effect, but it's not the main contributor.
Alors, est-ce que ça inquiète les pouvoirs publics?
And is that a worry for the public authorities? I don't know, but we certainly need new housing in France. So, as I said earlier, we've got indicators show that the property market is a little better, and so logically, if all goes well, ceteris paribus, the new housing market will benefit from that. We are historically very low on this building market in France. So, Annabelle, could you give us a figure about the value of the drop in costs in energy for 2024? So, as I said, 40% decrease in prices. We've got a cost of 1 million in 2023, over more than 2022. I can't quantify it more than that, but our cost was 40% of 2.5 million. That would be the economy that we would make year on year. 40% of 2.5 million. Given that the reduction in energy consumption won't necessarily be so good as in 2023. Okay, there will be certainly energy savings in electricities, where last year we had a drop of 9%. So I promise at the end of the first half we'll have a more specific look at that. It's a big expense. We've got salaries, the building costs, electricity, but energy is not in the top three of our costs. So we paid 1 million in 2023. We paid 1 million more in energy, but we gained 1 million in transport, savings in transport. So is it not an opportunity to accelerate development internationally, to take the sting out of the drop in the domestic market? So yes, there are great opportunities internationally. The way we could find quicker progress internationally is by going abroad, but for the moment and finding an external acquisition, but for the moment we haven't found the right opportunity. But you're right, that's Régis, that's one of our objectives, to be less dependent on the French market. The French market is okay, we understand it's not so good at the moment, but you have to remember that they really helped us in 21 and 22. Pierre asks, a lot of people can't apply for the MaPrime Renov grant. The idea of launching a vast targeted promotion on energy savings and water savings could possibly be a way of regenerating sales. It takes a long time to sell these things because there's a professional sector which is fairly traditional. When we arrive on the market with more sophisticated, more expensive equipment, the installers and the heating engineers, it takes time to convince them.
N'hésitez pas, là aussi, à jouer votre rôle de prescripteur et à demander, par exemple, à votre installateur.
So it's up to the consumer as well. You, for example, Pierre, to ask your installer to talk to you about these energy saving equipment is available today. Of course, it's a bit more expensive, but the return on investment is much faster, of course. But just to remind you, just to reiterate, it takes a time for these new products to have an impact on the market. So when the regulations require it, when the regulations force the process,
de changer la consommation, donc les normes de consommation électrique des circulateurs de chauffage. Donc tout le monde les a changés en même temps.
and the example of the circulating pumps on heating systems, which were changed throughout Europe a few years ago, with the idea of reducing energy consumption, that went very quickly. So I finished with all the questions that are on the chat. It's 6:53. Are there any more questions?
J'étais sur le registre questions. Est-ce qu'il y en a qui ont glissé?
Il y a des commentaires, mais
Just comments.
Les actions gratuites aux salariés, je n'aime pas ça. Être actionnaire, ça se mérite. Alors,
Somebody who doesn't like free share schemes. Denis, it's a bit radical because a lot of our shareholders, a lot of our employees are shareholders, either through our mutual fund, FCPE, or as direct shareholders. It's a big tradition in our group, and a lot of our employees are shareholders. 171 employees are direct shareholders. So it's always been a strong element within Thermador Groupe. The fact of the comments we had at the AGM from the people who voted the free share plan, they preferred an element of investment by the employee, which of course the opinion of some people. For our sustainable development objectives, there's a governance aspect, which one of the elements is that we want to take our employee shareholder level to 8.5% by 2030. And we know that the companies who have a lot of shareholders within their within their workforce perform better. And the employees have showed their commitment to it. Every time we've had very high levels, 80 to 90% subscription to new schemes that we set up with the FCPE, the mutual fund. Because we've had capital increase, increase in capital only for employees. There's always been oversubscribed, so that shows. In terms of the free share scheme, of course, it's just a question of learning. We need to explain how that works and what the advantages could be, and that's one of our projects, communication projects. And it's something that we will continue to do in the months ahead in 2024. Okay, I think we've finished. I think we've answered all the questions we've received, and I wish you all a very good evening, and see you very soon for our half-year results. Good evening to everybody. Bye bye.